That's the nice part of that lo-fi. Just to talk about the process of personal discovery. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another week of me, your friend Carlz, talking about or having a conversation about mostly media. Well, this week has had like a revelation. It had a revelation in 3 steps. The step one was I wanted to talk about the movie Hereditary. Uh, uh, I forgot his name. It's Ari Aster, right? Yeah, that's the director. So this horror movie about a haunted family, which, by the way, I'm gonna go full on spoilers. I think this movie can't be talked properly without spoilers. It just can't, because the plot is so crazy and the events that happen towards the end are so kind of like impactful that you can't really just say, oh, there's a big surprise at the end. It's not even a surprise, right? It's like a slow cook, but it's so steady that you sort of want to see the end result, right? Like you like you're cooking this thing, and if you don't see the end result, it's like you didn't eat at all. Does that make sense? But anyways, at the beginning, I wanted to talk about the movie because it's a movie that, for me personally, I just loved. It's just such a fucking great movie, right? It's creepy in like the biggest way possible. It's like a creepiness that sort of, you know how they do the effect of the symbiote sort of like getting into Spider-Man or Venom, and it sort of consumes you from head to toe, from toe to head, whatever you want to say it. Like, it's a slow creep and a slow build that makes for a horror movie that is so unique. It's so disturbingly unique that it just won't be everybody's cup of tea. So, at the first stage, I wanted to talk about the movie, but then I ran into a problem. This problem particularly was that I sort of got into this emotional state where I struggle by talking about the movie. Like, you can talk about Hereditary and just be descriptive and, I don't know, say things like, oh, the acting is great, or like, the plot is so interesting. The thriller elements in Hereditary are so well crafted that you get into this journey through the development of the story. Or you can say, um, the characters are so intense and passionate that they create this ambiance of conflict and tension that when they say you can cut tension like with a knife or something, like, you cannot cut this tension. Like, you can't cut this tension. This is like a permanent state of tension. The way it's shot is amazing. Everything seems to be a clue. As I said before, one of the best things about the thrillers, um, everything, like every shocking scene and every sort of impactful thing from a horror standpoint or point of view, is perfectly crafted, and it's like placed in the exact same moment that is like Machiavellian, but in a Machiavellic way, put right there to freak you out or to scare you off. But here's the problem. While I was reflecting on what I wanted to say about this movie, the more I reflected on it, the more I ran into this crazy wall of me trying to find a meaning in it. You know, I talk so much about horror movies, and I'm pretty much sure I said it once, and I haven't said it once. I probably said it more than once. That I think that this genre in particular, its biggest strength is that it's always a metaphor for something else. Like, we aren't just psychos or us horror lovers that, like, oh yeah, get this, like, I don't know, mass murder shit and like the gore. Well, there might be some of it, but to me, it's always a metaphor of something else. You know, if you can, I don't know if this metaphor is PG-13, but um, you know when something hurts, then you sort of get more receptive to stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like if you get a cut on your finger, for example, it gets sensitive, so you can push messages through it easily. I mean, not messages through your finger, but like messages through your psyche. So that's how, to me, horror always works. Like I'm gonna like, how do you call when you get like a piece of meat and you start hitting it to make it soft? You soften the meat, or like no, it's not blending, but you smash the meat with like a tiny hammer, so you make it softer. That's how horror works. But then there is always something that the movie is trying to say, in a way or another, in clever air or more clever ways. In sometimes it's really clever, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's basic. I don't know. The point is that for the life of me, I couldn't see Hereditary's message. I remember Toni Collette's, of course, the mother in the movie, probably like, nah, I'm not gonna say the best character, but like certainly the best performed one. I remember her once saying like, "Oh, I don't understand why people get so upset with this film." Like she said, "I see this as a family drama," which undoubtedly it is, right? I see this as a family drama, so not as much as a horror movie. And I'm thinking, okay, I see that as well. I see that this is a family drama, but there's a problem with that sort of plotline. If you want to see it as a family drama, is that drama for the sake of drama is not really what the movie is about, isn't it? And if you don't want to accept drama for the sake of drama, then you wonder, what is the message behind this drama? What are they trying to say? Like, I don't know, be honest and that will fix your problems, or like be more approachable, be more sincere. What is the craft behind the main plot of the story, which is, of course, focused on this one family? And what is my problem with that train of thought in general? And this is where you go fully into spoilers. The problem is that Hereditary not only ends on a really conclusive and unapologetic way, but the whole setup works in a similar manner. So for those who already saw Hereditary and don't remember or something like that, the family was cursed from the beginning. Even before the main family of the movie were the protagonist, the grandmother, the like, I was gonna say the mother's mother, but that's true, right? The grandmother already sold out her family to the cult of this demon creature called Paimon. Shout out to all the Genshin Impact players, right? She already sold her family to the cult of Paimon even before the movie began. So when the movie ends and the final plan they had to sacrifice it was the first one, right? They had to sacrifice the son to be the reincarnation of Paimon. When that happens in the end, it shows you not only that her plan worked, not only that, but it shows you that for some reason everything that happened during the movie was pointless. You know, that realization was quite impactful for me, because if you think about how the movie develops and how the characters interact among each other, you can say like, okay, this is a family story. It's about a family, like dealing with grief, finding each other. And even though this is a horror tragedy that ends badly, they reach a point of, I don't know. It's not like you can say they reach a point of total peace or like a complete equilibrium, because they don't. But not only that, it's pointless. That showed to me one thing about everything else, that deep down I'm a positive person. That I think that is the biggest takeaway and the biggest sort of like frustration, you can say, that I got when thinking about this movie. For some reason I kept like looking, and like, when you dig around. I mean, I've never dug around trash, but anyone can understand the metaphor of like digging around for not only what you want, but what you expect. So I dig around for a metaphor. I dig around for a teaching. I dig around for something for this movie to be about, other than pure and like unapologetic tragedy. And that's what happened. And like I said, three things, right? Like thing number two was that I couldn't find it. And as I struggled to talk about the movie, I got into this realization that I feel guilty to like something that has no sort of saving grace. And the more you struggle with that idea, the more you think about Hereditary under those terms, the more you realize that, in that sense, the sense of having a teaching or something like a positive to say, like the movie doesn't have anything. Think about, okay, let's not think about all the characters. Let's just think about the family. They all fucked up. They all fucked up. They don't have really like a redemption arc or anything. You know, the movie begins with the tragedy of the grandma dying and them being hunted, and then again from then on it's just like one after another, just tragedy, tragedy, tragedy. And if you think about the like towards the end of the movie, you think the climax in the character among the characters' relationships. You think about how they deal with it. Can you see any type of like how do you say, like, make peace? You can say make peace, right? They don't make, you can say make up, make peace. You don't see any reconciliation in the characters, none whatsoever. And something happens towards the end of the movie which is um, weird in more than one sense, and it's the fact that towards the third act of the movie, and even more so towards the climax of the movie, the supernatural just take over like crazy. The first time you see Hereditary, it's almost impossible to have seen that from far away, right? And like, who could have known that by the end of the movie, fucking Tony Collette would be running through the walls like a spider, or even more so. And this is like the part that is sort of shocking when you think about her saying that for her the movie was all about family relationships. This is a character that ends up beheading herself with a piece of like a string in one of the most impactful images you've seen in a horror movie, period. Not because it's not like, oh, you never see beheading. You never see people's head being chopped off in horror movies. Of course it does not. You see it all the time. But in Hereditary, the way they do it, you end up rooting for her, right? Like, you want her to deal with her grief, to make peace with her son and with her husband, because that's how reality works. That's how we want reality to work. You want to be able to look at your parent, look at your siblings, and if you have an issue with them, like fix it. Let's talk about it and let's fix it. And to me, that scene where Toni Collette's character finally gets haunted by the supernatural, her like slowly taking her head off with that like amazingly crafted sound, like it's like talking and saying like pointless, meaningless, I don't know, wiggling, like it's like grinding into the pathetic. And you can't really blame any of these characters. And that play the movie does between the real and the fantastic is not only really well made, but it breaks you. Because basically, not only you already accept the fact of the fantastic by the end of the movie, but it crushes any chance of having this, what I'm saying, this sort of teaching or this sort of positive outcome. Like, how can you? How can it? And this is a problem with the whole supernatural thing. It is kind of like a cheap. I don't know if cheap is the right word, but it's kind of like a convenient sort of almost Deus ex machina resource for the movie. Like just throw it down to the supernatural. Like whatever happens here, whatever they tried to do as a family, it was pointless from the beginning because they were haunted by the supernatural. And that challenged you to think more about the meaning of the movie. Because you could easily dismiss everything that happened and everything the family went through. You can easily dismiss it as something supernatural. Oh, they were haunted by these things. They never meant it. They were haunted. They were like manipulated into being what they are. But is that really the case? Here's how this thing works in my mind into creating not only a good movie, but a movie without like a positive message, as I said. Basically, you can say that this supernatural cult of demons, whatever, was behind the family's demise. But as soon as you think about it, you realize that this cult like mentality and this haunting, it never needed to be supernatural. And we see similar stuff haunting regular folks on a daily basis. Not only the cult of Paimon, but any organized religion can work in that manner. Drugs can work in that manner. Toxic relationships can work in that manner. The point is, you don't need a big metaphor to being controlled by external forces. So if you don't need like this to be a big metaphor about the helplessness of people against a bigger power, because they could have easily, I don't know, I mean they probably wouldn't have done it like instead of the cult of Paimon have any like modern organized religion doing so, or something that could be easily, I mean that's something that they could be easily sued for, like demanding any of these cult like things like religions or Taylor Swift or something. They could get sued for that. So they won't go explicit into it. But as I said, the metaphor is there. Anything could interfere with people suffering from grief and wanting to have something more than what they have in life. And that's all good and fine. But again, part of the brilliance of the movie is to give you that sort of context in a different point of the development of the character. What do I mean by this? As I said, the characters don't reach a point of. I'm like struggling with thinking about a word about them reaching a point where they are fine. Like before they can make up all of their issues, or like make up for all of their issues, they get interrupted by this supernatural force that in the end creates an ending for a movie that is so miserable and so pathetic that, as I said a little while before, it's a real struggle to see something positive about it. I kept thinking about similar movies that you can argue end up in this pathetic, nihilistic sort of state of mind. I talked about some of my favorite movies in that topic before. The Banshees of The Banshees of Inisherin. Well, I did an episode about that. I did an episode about Trainspotting too, one of my favorite movies. And here's the deal with that. Both of those movies have similar structures to Hereditary in a sense that they don't allow the characters to reach a state of mind or like a point of development where you can say like, oh, so this character learned this and this character is ready to go and do this. No, they end up in this pathetic sort of moment where the characters are stuck on their misery. But here's the deal. Trainspotting, for example, is a movie that is really loaded with culture and society. So even if it ends up in this nihilistic mindset of, well, I'm gonna fuck myself with drugs, I don't want to think about this, and like fuck everything, I just want money to get high and whatever, right? That nihilism is a commentary on society in general. It's saying I'm not choosing to be nihilistic because of an external force that is bigger than me, which capitalism society is, but this is society that create these people. So the message, positive as they might be, you can frame it in that mindset of criticism. I'm gonna criticize society that makes people like this. And I also thought about any sort of exorcism movie. I'm not a big fan of organized religion. Never been one and probably never will. But they have, of course, they have a bunch of shit. But whenever you see an exorcism movie, even though they might end up in, as I've been saying, the same pathetic state of nihilism, where like, fuck it, we are all victims. And even if you don't follow their dogma, don't agree with it or anything, there is a good and bad dichotomy implicit in the struggles in the movie. In other words, it's always the good fighting against the bad. Even if the good loses, you can still root for it. You think about The Exorcist, as I said, I don't agree with organized religion, but you understand that the priest is like the good guy and the demon is the bad guy. Even if there are subtleties in that assessment, even if this good and this bad are really like arguable, they are there. And I think that's one of the biggest strengths of Hereditary. Telling this story in like the most extremely concentrated, pathetic, like mechanic of narration. It's like, how can you see this movie and get anything positive out of it? It's impossible. Because all of their characters are highly imperfect. Their development is not agreeable. Is that a word? Like their development doesn't end in a position where like you can say, okay, they're gonna be fine. It gets cut out. As I said before, you can't. Also, you can't just like brush this aside as, oh, there's an external supernatural element that break this family apart. I already said why you can go like that. And you think about Walter Sobchak on The Big Lebowski when he talks about the Nazis. He says like, what is the quote? He says something like, "Say whatever you want about National Socialism, but at least it's an ethos." and that's sort of like the point of it. You think about the cult of Paimon in Hereditary. They are not thoroughly explained on their motivations. They only talk about it by the end of the movie, right? Like they wanna bring this demon to be like all powerful or whatever, but you don't really get into it. But they are not the main focus of the movie, so you don't really get to it. But as I say with Walter Sobchak, at least they have like the Nazis have an ethos. What is the cult of Paimons? So they keep it ambiguous to me for that reason. And I guess, as I said, this sort of revealed my own personal desire of seeing positive stuff, even in the more negative. I wondered, maybe that's why I love horror so much. And like in a way, you do need to be a little bit of like a masochist. I mentioned that I rewatched Hereditary as part of my Halloween marathon, and someone I really respect said like, "Oh, how can you watch that movie again alone?" Because at least if you see with people, or like if you see in a sharing sort of context, perhaps there's a chance you can, I don't know, get something more about it. But then I realized I saw it not only because I was just watching horror movies for Halloween, but I watched it because Hereditary's biggest strength is that of making you feel miserable. The thing about this feeling miserable and ultimately the way in which you can manipulate the narrative into something positive, and this is what I did in my mind, is that anything positive about Hereditary is not in the movie, it's not in the characters, it's not in anything on the movie's plot, but anything positive out of Hereditary comes after the credits end. That's the truth. That's how I reframe my anguish by watching this movie. By thinking positive thoughts out of all the negative that the movie has. And I still struggle to see if there is something like that in the movie. And I tried to see, for example, the like Toni Collette's character, like trying to hold on for herself and going into these groups. I see in the son, like suffering, struggling, just wanting for any of his parents to rescue him, or like on the dad, or like being open into this ludicrous situation, and like being like, okay, I can take it. You can see them struggling, you can see them trying. But since any movie is a message narrated by its creators, that is something Hereditary doesn't have, in my opinion. This is a piece of fiction, of literature that somebody wrote. Somebody was thinking about it. Like, I'm gonna say something with this. And to me, the only thing that it says is that grief, sadness, and ultimately the bittersweet of family filial love, like the kind of love that you can have among your family, it's above everything tragic, sad, and dark. That is like the fact that it's even more plausible to think that every family has their struggles than to think that every family is perfect. And you can say, like, of course, nothing is black and white. Everybody has its ups and downs, and of course we all do. But if I'm making a movie that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, you know, and I choose to show you only the bad parts throughout the whole movie's length. Not only that, I choose to show you the bad part throughout metaphors that are graphically disturbing. If that's what I'm choosing to say, you can't just say that the movie takes the black and takes the white and like sort of offers the gray. No, this movie is bleak as fuck. This movie is all about the black. It's all about the sadness. It's all about the frustration. It's not about anything good. It's not about anything like humanly good. It's about the humanly bad. It's about like the deepest corners of grief. This is a miserable, pathetic movie that has ultimately no sort of message as part of the movie itself. And I love it because the strongest its bleak message is, the stronger you gotta strive and fight to find something opposite outside the movie in your personal life. Now, I'm not 100% sure, and like I'm not aware that like the movie makers went and did that. Recently, I saw Ari Aster's like one of these videos where like the director is like unpacking or explaining or something, like talking about their movies or some scenes on their movies, right? And he talks about the movie where the son starts hitting his head against the desk. I avoided. I always when I see a movie that I like, I always have like a balance in between how much I wanna learn about the creators' sort of ideas behind it. I don't want my appreciation of the movie to be led too much by the explanations on the movie. I don't wanna the director to just straight up tell me like this is what we wanted to do. Sometimes I do just out of curiosity and I look for that. But anyways, in this video he starts describing the scene and how it happened and how the actor like honestly hit his head on the desk, and he's talking about the chalk, he's talking about the intensity of the movie. So it's never about the message, it's about the intensity. And by God, this movie has that. The shock of Hereditary is like, like being burned with like a cigarette. That happened to me. I mean, it's not like in a tragic sense. Somebody just burned me with a cigarette once, but it wasn't like, yeah, fuck you, man. No, like it was an accident. But anyways, that was my weeks of struggle with Hereditary, like almost a 2 week long sort of struggle and fight with myself for trying to find something positive in the negative. But it's not such a bad conclusion or such a bad mm, learning that perhaps the positive can be outside of the film. It can be beyond the credits. It can be something that you create as opposed to what you're seeing in the movie. And I think that's another reason why this is a movie you can or you better see with people, and you discuss with people, and maybe see how the gruesomeness and the extremity of its visuals, how they affect them. Would you be completely taken over by its bleak sadness, or would you strive to either find something positive in it, or to see some teaching or something that you could learn from it, to not necessarily then just become the happiest person in the world or anything, but that you can learn something from it? I think you can learn from almost anything. I mean, I don't know if you can learn something from like epic movie or like scary movie 7 or some shit like that. I don't know. Probably you can. But that's how I was gonna say that's how the world works, but that's not what I wanna say. Oh, sorry, Discord open up. You know? But anyways, that's basically my time and another effort for me to explain to the handful of listeners how a movie can be so good when it's just so bad, but not bad in a sense that it's a bad movie, but it's like a bleak movie. Perhaps it's like Spider-Man, you know, when he gets eaten up by the symbiote, like, oh, I'm gay, I'm getting eaten by the symbiote, oh, but deep down, Peter Parker finds the light. Well, Eddie Brock as well, but you know my point, right? So anyways, thank you all for listening to another rambling about Hereditary, and I mean about another movie, but this time Hereditary. For some reason, I just wanna see it again. I just wanna see it again, even if I'm on my own. I guess I'd rather talk with someone. I often I easily go on my own, and then I rebound ideas whenever I can from people. But this movie is so impactful and so shocking that the more time you let go by between when you see it and when you think about it, like it's sort of like it lessens the blow. I think so. But anyways, thank you for listening. Go find your what? Go find your thing, and if you get sucked into the bleakness of Hereditary, just wait until the credits roll and then put on Shrek. You know, the world can't be that bad if you have Shrek in it. I don't know about Shrek 5 or about Shrek 3. I don't know. I can see about Shrek 4. I can certainly defend Shrek 2. But Shrek 1 will always be there for you. For all you all-stars. So until next time, peel the onion and find the center. Even if it's smelly. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Bye-bye.